Hi there, welcome to Joyce on YouTube. Don't forget to join us on the Joyce Meyer app and at joycemeyer.org for more of what you're about to see and lots of great content to help you in your everyday life. Thanks so much for joining us.
You know, we only have so much time, and you think differently about time the older you get. And by the time you've lived about 3/4 of your life or 2/3 of your life or whatever, you get to the point where you really don't want to be wasting your time. If there's things that you want to do that you haven't gotten around to do it yet, you want to do them, but you don't want to waste your time. Well, I'd like to recommend that you never waste your time, not even when you're in your 20s or 30s, but it does become really important to you the older that you get. And you may be 20 now, but someday you will be 70 and 80, and it will happen faster than you think it will happen. And I believe that time is a very precious gift. And time, you can either waste it or you can use it wisely. But whatever you spend your time on, once you've spent it, you cannot get it back. Now, I want you to think about that seriously. If it's an hour or a week or whatever it is, if you spend 3 days angry, you've totally wasted those 3 days, and you'll never get those days back. Not ever again. In the early years when Dave and I first got married, and I still had such an out-of-control temper, I remember being mad, which happened often. I grew up around that. That was how I saw my dad handle everything. You just got mad and stayed mad till you got your way. And so that was what I did. And I remember Dave saying to me one day, he said, "Wouldn't it be awful if Jesus came back today and you spent the last day of your life on this earth angry?" And that really made me stop and think. There's so many things that we do that are a total waste of time. They don't do any good at all. So I'm going to share a few things with you this afternoon, and I'm sure you can probably come up with other things on your own. But how about if we make a commitment to start investing our time rather than wasting our time? Because we don't want to come to the end of our life and look back and have nothing but regrets. I think that is one of the saddest things that can happen to a person, is for it to be too late to go back and do what you wish you would have done and should have done, and just end up regretting the way you've lived with no way to fix it. So, the first thing that is a total waste of time is what the Bible refers to as dead works. Now, God wants us to do good works, but he wants us to avoid dead works. So, what are dead works? Well, dead works are our energy trying to do what only God can do. Do you know how hard it is to try to make something happen that only God can make happen? And the more you try to make it happen, the bigger mess you make out of everything. Anybody had any experience with any of that? We see this plainly with Abraham and Sarah when they wanted to have a child, and God had made them a promise. And it was a promise that was impossible to be fulfilled without God, because they were both way beyond childbearing age. Abraham was 100. Sarah was close to that, up in her 90s, I guess, and past childbearing years. And they'd never had a child of their own. God had promised them that they would, but they got tired of waiting. Anybody ever get tired of waiting? So they got tired of waiting and came up, well, Sarah, but it was just as much Abraham's fault because he followed her lead. Sometimes you need to follow the woman's lead, but sometimes you need to say no, because we can tend occasionally to be a little emotional. And So I guess on a certain day, Sarah just got really tired of waiting and she got a bright idea. You know what a bright idea is? It's one of those things where you're like, that's what I'll do, and that'll work. And then we even say, that's what God wants me to do. You know, God does speak to us through our thoughts, but every thought that you have is not God. And so some things you need to wait on and pray about a little bit more before you just go with the first thought that comes in your head. So she had this bright idea that she would give her handmaiden to her husband to be his secondary wife. How many of you already know that that's stupid? Okay? I mean, that had trouble written all over it before it ever got started. And she could bear children, so she wanted her husband to have intercourse with her, and that she would get pregnant, and then she would take that child as hers. Well, Abraham listened to what she said and did it. And sure enough, she got pregnant. Well, as soon as she got pregnant, then she got a bad attitude towards Sarah. Nah, 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 nah. I'm pregnant and you're not. I don't know if that's exactly the way it went, but she got a bad attitude. Well, then Sarah got mad because Hagar had a bad attitude. She had the baby, and Sarah and her never could get along after that. And so Sarah then went to Abraham and wanted him to go deal with Hagar. And he said, you take care of it, it's your own problem. And she said, no, you do it. She blamed it on him, he blamed it on her, and it just turned out to be nothing but a big mess. Well, we can read their story and say, how dumb, but how many of us do the exact same things day after day? When we want something, we can find 1,000 different ways to try to make it happen and think all of them are God. Dead works are works that don't work.
Want to hear more from Joyce on this topic? We've got you covered. Visit us in the Joyce Meyer app or at joycemeyer.org today.